Nation has support from both unions and businesses. You're in a unique position to build a bridge between these two groups to benefit all workers. With potential labor disputes on the horizon, I'm sure these relationships will be an asset for the Democrats' cornerstone legislation, the PRO Act. Workers should have the freedom to decide if they wish to join a union or not. The PRO Act would eliminate this freedom, allowing workers to be coerced and intimidated into unionization. I represent a right-to-work state. This protects workers from forced unionization. This is, of course, therefore, deeply important to me. I appreciated our conversations on this issue. I now understand that your co-sponsorship of the PRO Act did not reflect your support of the legislation, but rather your interest in being part of any group that legislated on behalf of employees' rights. I'm sure you will have the opportunity to explain your position and the Trump administration's position and agenda moving forward during this hearing. Thank you again for being here. I look forward to understanding your vision for the Department of Labor and how we can work together, empowering all workers and unleashing the American economy. With that, I yield to Senator Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ms. Chavez-DeRemer, for being with us. And let me begin by thanking the Biden administration for being the most pro-worker administration in the modern history of this country. The mission of the Department of Labor is, quote, to foster, promote, and develop the welfare of the wage earners, job seekers, and retirees of the United States, improve working conditions, advance opportunities for profitable employment, and assure work-related benefits and rights, end quote. That is the mission of the Department of Labor, and it is a mission that is more important now, in my view, than it has ever been. Mr. Chairman, for the past 50 years, our economy has been doing extraordinarily well. Never, ever done better for the people on top. Top 1% right now is enjoying wealth and power in a way that has never existed in the history of America. We now have the absurd situation, the disgraceful situation, where three people, Mr. Musk, Mr. Zuckerberg, and Mr. Bezos, are now worth over $900 billion. That is more wealth than the bottom half of American society, 170 million people. Is that really what America is supposed to be about? In America today, Mr. Chairman, we have more income and wealth inequality than we have ever had. Over 60% of our people, as we speak right here, 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. I grew up in a family living paycheck to paycheck. That ain't easy. Stress level, enormous. People trying to find out how they're going to get health care, how they're going to pay their rent, how they're going to feed their kids, which is one of the reasons why working class people die 6 years shorter lives, live 6 years shorter lives than the people on top. Given all of this reality of an economy that's working well for the billionaire class, but not for working families, we need a labor secretary who, in fact, is going to be a champion of working families, not be ambiguous about it, but stand up for the working families of our country. We need a labor secretary who understands that we must raise the minimum wage. Now $7.25 federal minimum wage. Anybody think that anywhere in America can live on $7.25 an hour? We need a labor secretary who will work each and every day to make it easier, not harder, for workers to exercise their constitutional right to form a union and collectively bargain for better wages, benefits, and working conditions. We need a labor secretary who understands that we must end once and for all the disastrous right-to-work laws in 28 states by repealing Section 14B of Taft-Hartley. We need a labor secretary who understands that we must end the international embarrassment of America being the only major country on earth that does not guarantee paid family and medical leave or paid sick days. Imagine that. Only major country on earth doesn't guarantee paid family medical leave. We need a labor secretary who understands that it's unacceptable that women are earning 75 cents on the dollar compared to men. So, Mrs. Chavez-DeRemer, I have reviewed your record, and in many respects, especially given the nature of the nominees that Mr. Trump has brought forth, it is very good. You were one of the few Republican members of Congress who co-sponsored the PRO Act and the Public Service Freedom to Negotiate Act to make it easier for workers to form unions. You have been a defender of union apprenticeship programs, and you have fought to expand the concept of employee ownership, something that I feel very strongly about. Many unions, as the chairman mentioned, have come out in support of your nomination, and that is an interesting development. I have spoken with you, and I've spoken with union leaders who support your nomination. But here is my concern. If you are confirmed, you will not only be in charge of enforcing more than 180 labor laws that are on the books today, you will be the president's chief labor advisor. That's what you'll be. When it comes to labor policy, you will have to make a choice. Will you be a rubber stamp for the anti-worker agenda of Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and other multi-billionaires who are blatantly anti-union? They don't make any bones about it. Or will you stand with working families all over the country? So that is really the main issue. It's not just your record. This is a very unusual administration. In my view, we are moving toward an authoritarian society where one person has enormous power. Will you have the courage to say, Mr. President, that's unconstitutional, that's wrong, I will not stand with you? So with that, I look forward to hearing what you have to say, and thanks for being with us.
And now to introduce the nominee, Senator Mullen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And before I read the opening statement, I just want to point out the unique coalition that President Trump has built here. If you take Tulsi Gabbard or Bobby Kennedy and now Lori, you know, the last time Sean and I was in this room together, obviously we had our differences. And Bernie, I think you remember that well. But somehow we were able to put our differences beside because President Trump asked us to. And when the words come up, like Biden administration was the most pro-union labor person in 50 years, you got to remind yourself, he also lost the labor vote by 59% because it wasn't working. But President Trump brings something unique to the table as he's built a coalition, and Lori represents that. Lori represents someone that is uniquely positioned to bring people like Sean and I, who presented Lori to President Trump and said, this is someone that we can work together with. And I would hope that you would set your biased opinions to the side and understand that this is a negotiation between two fractions of the party that is saying we're willing to work together. Employees don't exist without employers, and companies don't exist without employees. And I recognize that as much as anybody. And there is a position where we can be at, that we can find a negotiated agreement where we can set some differences aside, like the PRO Act. I think my position on that has been very, very, very clear. Oklahoma is a right-to-work state, but unions also thrive there. And at the same time, we can find common ground. Lori represents that. And so regardless of what you might think about the president, understand that this is someone that everybody should represent and should respect. If you're looking for a bipartisan, independent thinker that's going to represent the union that you want Mr. Sanders to say that you represent, when you understand that you have a president that's representing the Republican Party but also won the popular vote, you would think this is someone that you'd be very happy with. Because she is directly, uniquely positioned in the center. And I truly say that from a position that I've had to move a long ways. And if I can move, and if Sean and I can move and come together on this, then that, if nothing else, should set some type of example. Even though I do joke with my new friend over here, which I had the mic and he can't defend himself here, that if we were in a relationship, I'd be the man in the relationship. He adamantly denies that. But I say that because now we're friends enough that we can make fun of each other, and at the same time, we can work together. And so I want to read my statement, but what I've covered is pretty clear, and I wanted to say that from my heart. So, Chairman Cassidy, thank you for allowing me to share my thoughts and support on the nomination for Lori to be Secretary of Labor. As the Senate has gone through the advise and consent process of confirming President Trump's nominee, things have gotten increasingly partisan and contentious. But one thing that both sides of the aisle agree on is supporting working class Americans that power our country's economy. No company can survive without employees, and no employee is hired without a company. It takes both sides to be in a boat, rowing together in the same direction to be successful. I'm only moderately successful because I've been very fortunate to have employees that was willing to get in a boat with me and row in the same direction. With Lori's unique background as a small business owner, public servant, and through her relationship with union leaders, she has the ability to bridge the gap between businesses and workers. Lori's nomination reflects a historic coalition of working class Americans and elected President Trump to a second term in the White House. As a member of Congress, she often worked across the aisle in her efforts to support this cause. One of those issues is the PRO Act, as has been mentioned a couple times. I know that'll come up in conversation today. I get it, Oklahoma is a proud right to work state. And yet, we still support Lori. But as both sides of the table can continue to work together for hardworking Americans who have been struggling to put food on the table and to create better opportunities for themselves, their children, and their grandchildren. I don't think we have to look any farther than understanding Lori as an independent, nonpartisan perspective who will always keep the workforce the top of mind. And I would really encourage all of you to take a hard look, just like my good friend Sean and I have done. So with that, I'll yield back.
Thank you, Senator Mullen. Representative Chavez-DeRemer, you have a statement, and I think you're going to, along the way, introduce your family.
Chairman Cassidy, Ranking Member Sanders, and members of the committee. It is an honor to appear before you as President Trump's nominee to lead the Department of Labor. My discussions with many of you have been insightful and inspiring, reinforcing my commitment to serve our nation's workforce. Under President Trump's bold leadership following his historic November victory, I am uniquely prepared to lead this department with resolve and purpose. Before I begin, I want to take a moment to honor the incredible people who have supported me throughout my 24-year journey in public service. My parents, who became ardent fans of C-SPAN when I entered Congress, are here today offering their unwavering support. My twin daughters, Emily and Annie. Emily was here last week, and I know with the postponement, but she couldn't come back. She's 36 weeks pregnant, lives in Michigan, and her doctor said no more flying. So, Emily, I know you're watching, and I know you support me here today. And Annie, one's a Democrat and one's a Republican, and they have been my steadfast defenders, teaching me patience and the value of an open mind. And finally, my loving husband, Sean, my high school sweetheart, who has stood by my side through every trial and challenge. To all of you, thank you. Thank you for your boundless love and encouragement. I also want to thank the labor and business communities that are here in the audience today, because they see President Trump's vision for the American worker. I am deeply grateful to President Trump for this extraordinary opportunity to serve as the Secretary of Labor. It is both humbling and a call to action that I do not take lightly. In 2024, our nation witnessed the single greatest political achievement of our time. President Trump has united a new coalition of working-class Americans like never before, with 59.6% of Teamsters backing him, historic support from African American and Latino voters, and record-breaking turnout in once solid blue cities and states. Americans are speaking loud and clear. They are calling for action, progress, and leadership that puts the American worker first. Like many Americans, my journey is rooted in my values instilled by my father and mother. My father, a proud Teamster who worked tirelessly for over 30 years. The fair pay and benefits he received ensured our family's stability and security. From his example, I learned the transformative power of hard work and determination, propelling me to become the first in my family to graduate from college with a degree in business administration. Later, after supporting my husband through medical school, we built our own small business. For 2 decades, we successfully navigated the challenges faced by employers, from complex labor regulations to workforce shortages and rising costs. These experiences have given me invaluable insights into the struggles and triumphs of American business owners. Insights I carried with me as mayor of one of the fastest growing Oregon communities and later as a member of Congress. In every role, my priority has been clear: to fight for the American worker and the business that drive our economy. Our current economic landscape has changed dramatically since my father worked in a creamery, demanding bold action and real change. In the last 4 years, prices have risen, wages have fallen, and 78% of Americans do not feel confident that their children will lead better lives. We have also seen major companies like Hino Motors, General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis have accelerated layoffs at facilities across the country. To rebuild confidence and strengthen our workforce, we must invest in educational pathways beyond the traditional 4-year degree, ensuring that every American worker has access to the skills and training for long-term success. Part of that effort requires honest discussion about our labor policies. I know there has been a lot of conversation about my support of the PRO Act. Like President Trump, I believe our labor laws need to be updated and modernized to reflect today's workforce and the business environment. As a member of Congress, the PRO Act was the bill to have those conversations. Conversations that matter deeply to the people of Oregon's 5th Congressional District. I recognize that that bill was imperfect, and I also recognize that I am no longer representing Oregon as a lawmaker. If confirmed, my job will be to implement President Trump's policy vision, and my guiding principle will be President Trump's guiding principle, ensuring a level playing field for businesses, unions, and most importantly, the American worker. I also know that we will not always agree, but I promise there will never be surprises. My door will always be open, and I will never put my thumb on the scale. That commitment extends to the work ahead of the Department of Labor, which stands at a crossroads with a vital role in shaping a strong and resilient economy. As we confront these challenges, I know that everyone in this room shares the same goal: an economy where every American has the opportunity to thrive through good wages, safe working conditions, and a secure retirement. My record of collaboration demonstrates a shared belief that under President Trump's leadership, we can deliver real solutions. Putting American workers first is not just a vision, but a promise to fight for every working mom, single dad, small business owner, and every American striving for their fair shot at the American dream. If I have the privilege of being confirmed, I look forward to working with each of you to solve the challenges facing our country. Together, we can shape our economy that uplifts every American. I thank you. I thank this committee, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. I'll begin. First question: the Protecting the Right to Organize Act, or the PRO Act, is a significant and controversial piece of legislation Democrats have championed for years. And it's not pro-worker, it's pro-big union. To my mind, being pro-worker means defending the right of all workers, including those who decide they don't want to join a union. Now, you co-sponsored the PRO Act as a member of Congress. Yes or no, do you still support the PRO Act?
Thank you, Chairman Cassidy. It was great to visit with you. I know how important this issue is to you, and as it was said today, I recognize that I'm no longer the lawmaker, and I do not believe that the Secretary of Labor should write the laws. It will be up to Congress to write those laws and to work together. What I believe is that the American worker deserves to be paid attention to. That was President Trump and I's conversation in supporting the American worker, how important that is. I will not be that lawmaker anymore, but I was working for Oregon's 5th Congressional District and representing that. I wanted to be at that table. I never want to be left out of a conversation where we can talk about the American worker and how important that is. And I respect the right of the right to work states, and I have said that. The bill was imperfect. I understand that, and I'm no longer the lawmaker.
Okay. Now, the PRO Act, just to continue on that, would significantly impact franchisees and small businesses by increasing corporate control of the operations, or at least assuming that there's increased corporate control. This is yet another giveaway to large labor unions. It would make it easier to negotiate, the union to negotiate with large corporations instead of directly with the small business owner who actually employs the worker. So, question, do you believe federal law should prioritize policies that help small businesses thrive rather than imposing new regulatory hurdles which could hinder their success?
Senator, it's important for recognizing that the president's goal is to uplift all business owners and uplift all American workers. Understanding the franchise business model is important to the American workforce. I supported the overturning of the NLRB rule on joint employer to support the franchise business model and supported the president in this. And I align that this is important to grow this economy and recognize the flexibility in people choosing where they want to do business.
So by that, am I to take that you would commit to reexamining DOL's joint employer guidance to provide small businesses with a clear roadmap on the issue?
Yeah, thank you, Senator. Certainly, if confirmed, I'll be looking at all regulations and determining and looking at all of these rules and regulations, and specifically that one.
And I think the small employer wants that clear roadmap.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Next question. Approximately 27 million workers work as independent contractors, including working moms, caregivers, self-employed business owners. Now, for many, the flexibility of independent work is essential to balancing personal responsibilities and earning a living for their family. I will point out that the PRO Act tried to impose a one-size-fits-all rule, which, as was done in California, disrupted livelihoods instead of helping workers. So question, if confirmed as Secretary, will you commit to refrain from implementing any rules stripping independent contractors of flexibility they need to provide for their families and simultaneously contribute to the American economy?
Thank you, Senator. Certainly, we'll commit to understanding this. I know the president in the first administration set out that rule, and the parameters is very important to him on the flexibility of who is an independent contractor and who is an employee, and that they're properly classified. But I commit to working with you on supporting independent contractors through this process, because that flexibility is what needed. I understand, as you're mentioning in the PRO Act, but again, as I mentioned, that bill wasn't perfect, and these are those conversations that needed to be had, and supporting that independent contractor is key to growing this economy.
Now, supporting that independent contractor, and something I'm very interested in, is how do we provide the independent contractor with more affordable health and retirement benefits without losing that work flexibility? If you will, the employer, the person contracting with them, not an employer, would nonetheless be able to give them access to such benefits. I'm asking you if you will work with me and with our committee on legislation to make sure that the independent worker and the small business are able to get the affordable benefits available to ordinary employees at larger companies.
Yes, sir. I will commit to working with you wholeheartedly on this issue.
With that, I will yield to Chairman Sanders, the ranking member Sanders.
I'll take the chairmanship.
Thank you, Chairman.
Oh, thank you, Senator Cassidy. You're not the Congresswoman from Oregon anymore, right?
No, sir.
Okay. You're trying to become Secretary of Labor. Let me back up and say a word about what the PRO Act is. I'm not sure that most Americans know what it is. The reality is that in America today, labor unions have the support of some 70% of the American people. You know why? Because people understand that the big corporations and their bosses have all the power. People understand CEOs make 300 times more than their workers, and people say, you know what, the only way we're going to get decent wages and benefits is when we organize. Millions of people want to join unions, but they can't join unions. You know why? Because corporations day after day operate in illegal ways. They break the law. They say to somebody, you were late 3 years ago. You're a pro-union, you were late 3 years, you're fired. We're going to take you into a captive audience, and for hour after hour, we're going to tell you how bad unions are. You want to join a union? Fine, you vote for a union, we're moving the plant to China. All of that stuff happens to be illegal. All of that stuff happens to be done every single day by corporate America. So, let me go back to the original question. PRO Act is designed to prevent illegal behavior on the part of corporate America, on the part of employers, so that workers can make a free choice. Do you support the PRO Act?
Thank you, Ranking Member Sanders, and I appreciate the conversation. I support the American worker. President Trump.
Okay, I don't mean to be rude.
No,
We
you're
don't
not
have a lot of
rude.
time.
I understand.
I'm gathering that you no longer support the PRO Act, is what I hear. That you support the American worker, that's what everybody here will say. Ms. Chavez-DeRemer, in 2021, President Biden signed the Butch-Lewis Act that prevented the earned pension benefits of some 2 million union workers and retirees from being cut by up to 65%. There are people in Congress who want to undo that enormously important legislation. What do you feel about the Butch-Lewis Act?
I support the Butch-Lewis Act in protecting their retirements.
And you will go to the wall, to go to the mat supporting it?
I do support protecting
Okay.
people's retirements.
Federal minimum wage is $7.25. The state has voted to raise the minimum wage. Somehow we can't do it here in Washington. 20 million workers are making less than $15 an hour. Do you support raising the minimum wage to a living wage?
Ranking Member Sanders, you know that that is an issue for Congress to determine and raising the minimum wage. As the Secretary of Labor, I cannot weigh in on that. That's determined by Congress. If they want to negotiate that, I will fully and fairly enforce the law as a Labor Secretary, if you all so choose, and give you whatever data possible to make that decision as members of Congress.
Well, I understand that Congress makes the law, but you have an opinion, and you will be the leading advocate for workers if you are confirmed. Question, if you were sitting where I'm sitting, would you vote to raise the minimum wage to a living wage?
Well, I'm not sitting where you're sitting hypothetically. I used to, but not any longer. But I do recognize that the minimum wage hasn't been raised since 2009, and the cost of living has gone up. But again, I cannot sit here and determine what that wage will be fully and fairly. I will enforce the law, but it will be up to Congress to determine, because that is not in the purview of the Secretary of Labor. For instance, in Oregon, I know that in Portland, Oregon, that the minimum wage is almost $16 an hour, and that might work for Portland, but that's not going to work for Grants Pass, Oregon. And I know that local communities, states determine what's best for their economy. What we don't want to do is shock the economy. But again, sitting here today, I cannot determine as Secretary of Labor if it should be.
Ms. Chavez-DeRemer, in his second week in office, President Trump fired Gwynne Wilcox, a member of the National Labor Relations Board, leaving the RB without a quorum. And what that means right now, that if workers form a union, vote to form a union, and the company says, well, it was illegal, it's unfair, you can slow up the process because there's nobody to go to. Do you believe that the firing of Ms. Wilcox was illegal, which I do?
President Trump has a right to exercise his executive power, how he sees in consultation with.
Are you concerned that we do
team.
not have a functioning NLRB right now?
The NLRB is separate from the Department of
I
Labor, but
understand
I
that.
do believe that the function of the NLRB is important, and I will always take that into consideration doing my
Are you
job.
concerned that we do not have a functioning NLRB now?
Well, again, I have not been read in with President Trump, but he has a right to exercise his executive power, and I do believe the NLRB has an important role, independent of the Department of Labor, and I respect their position as an independent agency.
Thank you.
Senator Paul.
Welcome. I
Thank
enjoyed our
you.
meeting in our office, and I know you're aware of this, but about half the country has right-to-work laws. 26 states have them. When you compare right-to-work states with non-right-to-work states, you see that the work states have double the employment growth. If you look at manufacturing jobs, they have 5 times the manufacturing job growth. If you look at disposable income in the right-to-work states, about $3,000 more per individual for disposable income in the right-to-work states. The PRO Act wasn't just about organizing or enabling unions to organize, which they already have the right to do. The PRO Act was about overturning right-to-work laws in 26 states, half of the country. Most of these states would argue that this was would be a horrendous invasion of their prerogatives. The chairman asked you, and then the ranking member asked you, do you still support the PRO Act? The reason we want to know is this is a tremendous sort of invasion of the states' rights to decide these. This would be overturning the right-to-work laws in half of the country. Do you still support the PRO Act or don't you support the PRO Act?
Thank you, Senator Paul, and I appreciated our meeting as well. I thought it was quite, what you shared with me is how important it is to you and your state, and I heard that from many members. The right to work is a fundamental tenet of labor laws, where states have a right to choose if they want to be a right-to-work state, and that should be protected.
PRO Act would have overturned that.
Yes, thank you, Senator. I signed on to the PRO Act because I was representing Oregon's 5th District, but I also signed on to the PRO Act because I wanted to be at that table and have those conversations. But I fully, fairly, and support states who want to protect their right to work. I have said that to every senator that I have
So
visited
you
with.
no longer support the aspect of the PRO Act that would have overturned state right-to-work laws?
Yeah, there were so many parts.
That's a yes?
Yes, yes, sir.
No more questions.
Thank you, Senator.
With that, I go to Senator Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congresswoman Chavez-DeRemer, welcome.
Thank you, Senator.
The Trump administration is flagrantly violating the bipartisan agreements in our appropriations law by refusing to spend money that Congress in a bipartisan manner has passed for the American people. I've been hearing about it in my home state of Washington. I heard from an organization in Edmonds about whether or not it'll now be able to provide support for our veterans who are seeking educational and employment opportunities as they transition to civilian life. I heard from a workforce training program that operates statewide about whether they'll now be able to continue to pair workers with employers in the grocery industry. You should know that the chaos surrounding these funding freezes is causing real damage to people's lives. So I want to know, will you commit to following appropriations laws and the Impoundment Control Act?
Yeah, thank you, Senator. I know we talked about this in your office as ranking member of appropriations, and I do respect the Appropriations Committee. As a former member of Congress, I think everyone in this room who's ever sat behind that dais can understand that. Again, the President of the United States has the power to determine what he's going to do through his executive power. I am not been confirmed. I have not been read into all that.
I'm asking you, will you
Yes.
follow the law?
I will always follow the
There
law
is
and the
an Impoundment
Constitution.
Control Act. Will you follow that law?
I will follow the law and the Constitution.
If you receive a directive to violate appropriations laws and withhold funding for workers, what will you do?
I do not believe the President is going to ask me to break the law, 100%.
Well, we have seen that across the board since he was put into office, where he is violating that law. So you will likely be asked, what will you do?
Well, it's a hypothetical. I have not talked to the President on this issue, and I
So
do
you
not
won't
believe...
commit to following the law if the President tells you to violate it?
I will commit to following the law, and I do not believe the President would ever ask me to break the law.
Well, okay. Last week, Elon Musk's Doge team came to the Department of Labor and got access to the department's sensitive information system. Musk's companies have, as you must know, been repeatedly accused of violating labor laws, including workplace safety laws, discrimination laws, and wage and hour laws. In fact, OSHA has investigated Tesla and SpaceX. Now Elon can access those investigations about his companies because he's gone in and gotten those records. He can also access sensitive market-moving data created by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That gives him tremendous power to manipulate quarterly jobs numbers and other important economic data, to say nothing of raising potential insider trading concerns. Just to make this abundantly clear, Elon Musk is now in a position to use his unelected role to use confidential government data to advance his own corporate interests while suppressing his competitors. Do you believe it is appropriate for someone with such blatant conflicts of interest to have access to those confidential economic and personal information?
Thank you, Senator Murray. If I have the honor of being confirmed by this committee and the full Senate, then I will have the opportunity. I have not stepped foot into the Department of Labor. And I understand.
Well, my question to you is, will you protect the private information of people whose records you will be overseeing? Will you allow anyone, a billionaire or anyone else, to come in and access that?
Again, because I have not been confirmed. I only see the reports that everybody else has seen. I have not been read into that. If confirmed, I will, if confirmed.
You're not answering the question.
If confirmed, I will support the Department of Labor. I think it's important to support the Department of Labor, but I have not been.
Will you support the private information that you will be overseeing? Will you protect that?
I would protect the private information. On this issue, I have not been privy to those conversations with the president. I have seen that, and if confirmed, I commit to you that I will always protect the Department of Labor and those issues.
Well, let me ask you about child labor. It's an area that I've been very worried about, the rise of child labor violations. The Wage and Hour Division at the department has actually seen a 31% increase in minors employed in violation of child labor laws since 2019. In the last administration, the Wage and Hour Division at DOL and the Solicitor's Office worked really hard to secure some really important victories against some really egregious violators. How will you make sure that the Wage and Hour Division and the Solicitor's Office work together to enforce our child labor laws in this country?
Well, protecting child labor is abhorrent, and nobody should stand for child labor exploitation. I will do everything in my power within the Department of Labor to double down on the safety of all American workers that are exploited, but especially child labor. And I would love to work with your office. If this is an important issue, it's important to everybody to making sure that we protect against any child labor exploitation.
Senator Husted.
Thank you, Chairman Cassidy, and it was a pleasure to visit with you, Ms. Chavez-DeRemer, in our meeting yesterday. I appreciate you taking the time to come visit and share your views across a variety of issues. I would like to talk a little bit today. I know that everyone in this hearing has talked about how they care about the American worker and how we make the world better for them. One of the ways we do that is we do more Made in America, which I know is very important to President Trump. Another way that we consider this in terms of earning power of the American worker is the impact that illegal immigration has had on undermining their ability to earn higher wages. And I'm just interested in your opinion about whether or not that you think the influx of millions of people into this country who many of them are here illegally is undermining the earning power of the American worker.
Well, certainly we want to protect the American worker, and Made in America is important to the President of the United States. I couldn't be more proud to support the America First agenda for exactly that reason. We certainly want to make sure that we're focused on growing this economy. That is the conversation that I had with the President on how can we bring the American worker to be the pinnacle of every conversation that we have and supporting them and growing this economy. So yes, the influx of the mass immigration that we've seen over the last 4 years has hurt the American worker, and we want to make sure that we're supporting President Trump in his endeavor to support the American worker at all costs.
Great, thank you. Let's talk about another aspect of Made in America. If we're going to make more things in America and we're going to compete on price so that we don't have inflation, we're obviously going to need to create more productivity. Productivity comes from technology in the workplace. As we integrate technology in the workplace throughout time, it has always been a subject of conversation, consternation, but it is inevitable that technology will advance and we will have to compete. I would like for you to talk about your thoughts on the role of technology in the workplace because We want to make jobs safer. We want to make them more rewarding, which technology can do. We also know that in creating productivity, it can create profits for business, and we want to make sure that the reward of that innovation is given to both the worker and the business in terms of who benefits from the introduction of that technology. Talk about the role of technology in the workplace as it relates to labor and how we do more made in America with these new innovations.
Thank you, Senator Hughes. We had this conversation yesterday, and how important that you've been involved from all levels representing your states. And I've talked to many of the senators on this issue, and it is a consternation about, will that replace, the American worker? And I would say there's got to be space for both, because it's going to happen. And what we don't want is for other countries to get ahead of the game, ahead of America. So how we can work together with the American workforce, the employers and the employees, and how we can work with Congress to determine what that looks like. But if there is profitability in there and we can support the American worker, and then we can have those American workers upskilled and reskilled, and this is going to be great for America to grow that economy and then share in that profit with the employees that are supporting. I think that's the key. The president and I had a conversation specifically on building that bridge between the employer and the employee and labor and business, all of that. And if we grow this economy, we can do to bigger and better things, and everybody can live that American dream, as you mentioned. So I look forward to really diving in as the Department of Labor and giving the resources, not only to those businesses, but not only to those employees, but to members of Congress who can take this story back to their states and know that the Department of Labor, and as me as a leader, is going to work on their behalf.
And a final component of that is that many, many Americans can have higher paying jobs if they have the right kind of skills. They don't need to go to college. They can get there through apprenticeships. Talk about how we can expand apprenticeships and make sure that we're helping the American workforce get the skills they need to compete, be more productive, and help America win.
And one of President Trump's #1 focus is the expanded apprenticeships, is the investment in apprenticeships, making sure that we have the skilled workforce. I know as a former mayor and working with business owners and working with community colleges, that not everybody's going to get that 4-year degree. We have to pay attention that they have the skills that they need, that they can connect right to the business owners in their communities and reinforce that and not have to pick up and walk away. There's nothing that I want more than for business and employers and the education departments to work together and really have a skilled workforce.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Senator.
Senator Baldwin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Chavez-DeRemer, when we met, you expressed your strong support for registered apprenticeships. So I want to dig a little bit deeper on that last question you were asked. That was reassuring to hear, particularly in light of the first Trump administration's effort to fund non-registered apprenticeships, or IRAPs, as they're called. You also said that you had not yet had an opportunity to talk with the president about policy at the time we met. Have you had the opportunity to talk with the president about about registered apprenticeships? And if so, has that changed your position?
No, thank you, Senator, on that issue. It is so important on the registered apprenticeships and really investing and even doubling down on that. I know in the first administration, and I haven't talked to the president on the first administration's policies compared to now on apprenticeship from the last administration, but I think there's a lot to learn from what happened in the first administration and the successes and not successes. But right now we're focused on the registered apprenticeships, growing those, investing in those, and making sure that those are adhered to.
Thank you. I want to also dig a little bit on appropriated funds. The Labor, Health and Human Services Appropriations Bill includes dedicated funding for apprenticeship programs and specifies that the funding is only available for registered apprenticeships. So I ask this in the context of actions this administration has already taken, including a government-wide funding freeze that has now been halted by the court. As ranking member of the Labor, Health and Human Services Appropriations Subcommittee, I have a particular interest in the department implementing our bill as Congress intends. That is why I was so alarmed to see the National Institutes of Health flaunt the law last week when it proposed a policy that directly conflicts with longstanding appropriations language in the labor HHS bill. The labor HHS bill says that you can't do it, and NIH said it was doing it anyways. My question to you is, will you follow the law that says funding for apprenticeship programs can only be used for registered apprenticeships, yes or no?
Yes.
More broadly, do you commit to spend funding as Congress appropriates it?
Yeah, again, as I mentioned earlier, it was asked, as a former member of Congress, I highly respect the appropriations process and the role of Congress.
Thank you.
Yes.
The nation's nurses face challenging working conditions, and they are too frequently exacerbated by instances of workplace violence. We talked about that in my office. I appreciated that you said that you really take that issue seriously. Right now, the Department of Labor plans to issue a notice of proposed rulemaking in June of this year for the workplace violence in healthcare rulemaking. Do you commit to getting this proposed rule issued by June of this year and finalized in a very timely way?
Well, I can commit to working with you on the issue because it is an important one. And if confirmed, I will look at every rule as it moves forward. But until then, I haven't even seen specifically on the rule. But I commit to working with you and taking a look at it.
Close conversation on that.
Yes.
We've been waiting a long time. It's past due. Your opening statement mentioned putting workers first. You've repeated that a number of times. So I hope to have your commitment to aggressively pursue enforcement against employers that deny workers the wages they've earned or fail to provide safe working conditions. The Department of Labor plays a critical role in protecting workers' rights, including ensuring workers get the back pay they are owed and investigations into allegations of child labor law violations. If confirmed, I look forward to working with you to make sure that the department has the resources to do this important work. Can you commit to me that this important work will continue under the Department of Labor, at the Department of Labor under your leadership, yes or no?
Yes.
Can you confirm that information under the Department of Labor's Wage and Hour Division on their website will remain up to date, publicly accessible, and comprehensive like it is today? Yes or no?
Again, I have not been at the Department of Labor. I have not, but look forward to working with the agency heads and making sure that people have the information that they need.
All right, one last question. The Women in Apprenticeship and Non-Traditional Occupations Grant Program.
Senator Baldwin, time's expired.
All right, I will submit that for.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Banks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Chavez-DeRemer, we served together in the House and worked together on the House Education and Workforce Committee, where you were a leader. You worked on many of the very issues that you are testifying about today. You are enormously qualified for this position, and I'm proud to support you. But can you explain to us for a moment what it means to you to put American workers first in this golden age of America's economy?
Thank you, Senator. Important to me, as was mentioned, the American worker. But we have to make sure that the American worker is being fortified with not only the skills that they need in order to answer the call, but people are looking for the American dream. People are wanting to have the skills to work in whatever they determine that to be. Again, we're seeing it's not the four-year university always, it's the two-year, it's the certificate base, it's answering the call so they can have mortgage-paying jobs for their families and understand that we're going to protect their benefits and their rights and safety in the workplace. The Department of Labor is sole focus is to make sure that we are protecting the wage earner, that we are helping the job seekers who are out there looking and really reinvigorating the job seekers who have decided that they don't want to look any further, and then protecting those retirees. As a member of Education and Workforce and working together, workforce investment, workforce development, I think is going to be key for all of our respective states. This shouldn't be a party issue. I've said this over and over again. That's why I've always worked across the aisle, because the American worker, we don't know what their party is, but we know that it matters to them to protect their families. I know how important my family's jobs were for us growing up, and I know how important it was for my husband and I to build that business for our children and soon-to-be grandchild. So I look forward to continuing down that road and always keeping that American worker at the pinnacle. And President Trump has said the same thing, and we align on this issue. The American worker, this new coalition, this new direction is where we're headed in this country.
Very, very well put. I know you know this. Indiana is the top manufacturing state in the country. Yet the China shock wiped out 5 million manufacturing jobs in this country. And yet the federal government programs that were built to help those people who lost their jobs, way too many of them were left behind and didn't get a job as good as the manufacturing job that they had before because of the efforts of China to wipe out so many of those jobs in our country. How can we better serve those people? How do we get those people back on their feet and help them find meaningful, good-paying jobs like the one that they had before that was taken away by our biggest enemy, China?
That's right. Well, again, it's that workforce investment, that workforce development. Oftentimes, as a former mayor, if we don't go out and talk to the business community, if we don't go out and talk to those employers about what they're seeking and how they can find those jobs, we have to make sure that we are the leaders in this nation and in the world, not China and not any other country. President Trump, the golden age that you mentioned, this has been first and foremost the America First agenda, and workforce development and protecting the American worker and have them the ability to earn those wages and live the American dream is number one in the America First agenda. That, to me, is telling why this coalition, this new direction of bringing labor and business and support is to uplift all Americans, and this is first and foremost on the president's mind.
Back in November, when President Biden was still in office, his Labor Department reported a 31% increase over the last 5 years of illegal child labor in America.